You're listening to the Ordinary Vegan Podcast, where we teach you everything you need to know about adopting a plant-based diet full or part-time. Our goal is to empower you to live a long and healthy life. You can find today's show at ordinaryvegan.net or on iTunes. If you have any questions, please send an email to questions@ordinaryvegan.net.
Hello, friends, and welcome to the Ordinary Vegan Podcast, number 20. My name is Nancy Montori, and if this is your first visit, I advocate a plant-based diet for health, wellness, and longevity. If you're new to this podcast, please listen to podcast number 1, Getting Started on a Plant-Based Diet, and podcast number 10, How to Get Optimum Nutrition on a Plant-Based Diet. I always like to begin these podcasts by thanking all of you who have been reaching out to me. I so appreciate your feedback, questions, and generous reviews on iTunes. I am here to serve you and hopefully provide you with all the tools you need to transition to a healthy plant-based diet. I just celebrated my 6-year vegan anniversary. I can't believe it. Time is going by so fast. But it got me thinking about my plant-based journey and my epiphany moment. And that was the moment that I realized that I could survive and be happy without something I always thought I needed to exist. I could never have experienced that spiritual awakening had I not changed my diet 6 years ago. Before I became vegan, I always felt like I was walking in a jungle with a machete in my hand, carving my path one underbrush at a time. After I became vegan, I didn't need that machete anymore. The jungle dissolved, and I could see everything that I needed to know about the world. I felt like I wasn't alone anymore, and that my existence was interconnected to everything around me. I know that sounds somewhat dramatic, but it is absolutely 100% true. It all began when I started to feel my energy change. It happened quickly, probably 4 months into my vegan lifestyle. My first inkling of things to come was when I started to get rid of that scared part of myself, that part of me that used to hold me back. But that wasn't the only thing. My vegan diet provided me with energy, peace, contentment, and more love for all sentient beings. It took me a while to understand how it all tied into veganism, but when you ditch eating animals, not only does your health improve, you are also making a powerful connection to the world by saving animals and the planet. You can't help but become more evolved. So no matter where you are in your vegan journey, full or part-time, you can experience this same spiritual growth. Every plant-based meal you consume or serve to your family is cultivating compassion for the world. The more plant-based meals you eat, the more powerful the results. And always remember, you don't have to be perfect. Sometimes I worry that being perfect holds people back from exploring a plant-based diet, and it can feel overwhelming. I know, I have been there. But if I could do it, you can do it. You got this. I wasn't even a vegetarian before I became vegan. And I promise the journey will liberate you like it did me. Now, let's talk about this week's podcast, cow's milk. I'm getting back to some basics today because sometimes when you know a lot about something, you just assume everyone shares that knowledge. Like why we shouldn't consume cow's milk in any form, including cheese. So today, I wanted to devote this podcast to cow's milk. It's not always popular to speak negatively about commonly consumed and highly touted foods like cow's milk and cheese. But I felt personally bamboozled when I discovered the harmful effects of dairy on my health. And then I learned the environmental impact of cow's milk on the planet. And then, sadly, I learned about the exploitation of animals for profit who provide the dairy. How could I have been so misled for so long? Well, it wasn't my fault, and it's not your fault either. The United States Department of Agriculture and the milk industry has spent a lot of money over the years touting the importance of milk and marketing that message to all of us. Here is a little history. From 1956 until 1992, the United States Department of Agriculture nutrition guidelines recommended milk in their basic 4 food groups, which included cheese, meat, bread, and vegetables. Other foods recommended to round out our meals included butter. During that time, the milk industry ran advertisements that said the calcium in cow's milk can help prevent stress fractures and broken bones. They put the fear into us. We thought if we didn't drink our milk, our bones would become brittle and crack like dry twigs, especially as we aged. The irony is that many scientific studies now show that cow's milk actually has a negative effect on bone health. Here are a couple of those studies. Researchers in Sweden published findings in the British Medical Journal showing that women who drink milk have a higher incidence of bone fractures and an increased risk of mortality from heart disease and cancer. Dairy products can also be high in retinol, which is vitamin A, which at high levels can weaken bones. According to another study, women who consume 3 or more glasses of cow's milk per day has a 60% increased risk of developing a hip fracture and a 93% increased risk of death. And each glass of milk increases mortality risk by 15%. Calcium is important, but that isn't the whole story, according to the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. Cow's milk, meat, and other high-protein animal foods can actually cause the body to lose calcium. To protect your bones, you do need calcium in your diet, but you also need to keep calcium in your bones. And plants are loaded with calcium, and the most healthful calcium sources are leafy greens, legumes like beans and lentils, cruciferous vegetables, and calcium-fortified beverages like almond milk or orange juice. Last but not least, Dr. T. Colin Campbell, author and scientist of the China study, called casein, which is the number 1 protein in cow's milk, the most relevant cancer promoter ever discovered. In a nutshell, his research and studies on casein and cancer was so profound that the scientists could literally turn cancer growth on and off with casein in laboratory animals. Just like a light switch, simply by altering the level of casein protein in their diets. Interestingly, they also found that feeding the animals the same levels of plant-based protein did not promote cancer growth. So any food containing cow's milk, like cheese, yogurt, sour cream, and ice cream, all contain casein, the most relevant cancer promoter ever discovered. I will provide the links for all these studies in this week's show notes. Now, let's talk about the planet. Cow's milk also comes with a huge environmental cost. Not only do cows require large areas of fertile agricultural land and huge amounts of energy to feed them, they also produce a massive amount of waste, and they are a major emitter of methane. Did you know methane gas is a more potent gas than carbon monoxide and is considered the next climate crisis? If you're not familiar with methane, it is a colorless, odorless chemical compound. In its natural state, methane is found both below ground and under the seafloor. When it finds its way to the surface and the atmosphere, it is known as atmospheric methane. The Earth's atmospheric methane concentration has increased 150% in the last 150 years. Why? Because of the increase in animal agriculture, specifically cows. As far as dairy goes, the United States is the largest producer of milk in the world, followed by India and China. The traditional approach to dairy farming used to be small farms which had a herd of about 100 milk cows. Those families operating the farm provided most of the labor and grew most of the feed on their farm. When milk prices became artificially low, small farmers had to become vast and industrial or give up dairy farming. The reason behind the low milk prices had nothing to do with demand. Milk prices are mostly determined by federal policies and state dairy programs. In other words, farmers didn't set their own milk prices, the government did. And these price swings is what put a lot of small dairy farmers out of business. But even as the number of dairy operations disappeared, the number of dairy cattle continued to surge. That's because over the last 2 decades, small and medium-scale dairy farms have given way to factory farms that confine thousands of cows in tightly packed facilities. Some consumers still believe that milk comes from small family farms with cows grazing on hills, but that is now almost completely obsolete. With the rise of factory farming, milk is now a most unnatural operation. The modern dairy farm can have hundreds, even thousands of cows. Today's average dairy cow produces 6 to 7 times as much milk as she did a century ago. And cows spend their lives being constantly impregnated in order to produce milk. And the part that I don't like to think about is on dairy farms, calves are generally torn away from their mothers within a day of birth, which causes them both extreme stress. Given the chance, just like human beings, cows nurture their young and form a lifelong friendship. Even on so-called humane dairy farms, calves are often taken within the first hour of birth. Now, let's get back to methane. It's not a cow's fault that they are emitting so much methane. Just like human beings, cows are what they eat. Sickness and poor digestion are the norm for cows on factory farms who eat GMO corn and soybeans rather than pasture grass. So, of course, that causes and creates more flatulence and more methane. In 2014, a herd of flatulent cows actually caused a methane explosion and blew off an entire barn roof in Germany. Cows now produce over 150 billion gallons of methane per day. Over a 20-year period, methane is 84 times more powerful than carbon dioxide at destabilizing the climate. Gases like methane trap heat in the atmosphere. These gases make the planet warmer and thicken the Earth's blanket and cause a man-made greenhouse effect that traps us inside and changes the temperature of the Earth's surface. Shifting the temperature of the Earth even a couple of degrees can throw an entire ecosystem into chaos and create extreme weather events. I also want to mention herbicides. Almost all cow's milk has measurable quantities of herbicides and pesticides and over 50 powerful antibiotics. As a matter of fact, over 80% of all antibiotics sold in the United States are used in food producing animals. Antibiotics are generally fine when they're used properly. However, if we receive excessive antibiotics from food, they end up becoming less effective, meaning we can develop a resistance to antibiotics, and when we really need them, they may not work. I know you get the picture. At the end of the day, I guess we just have to ask ourselves, is a piece of cheese or a glass of cow's milk really worth what it does to our health, to the environment, and to animals? And the good news is, there is no reason to miss cow's milk. There are hundreds of delicious dairy alternatives like almond milk, coconut yogurt, and some nut cheeses. You can even get rich, non-dairy creamers for your coffee. As far as processed vegan cheese goes, this isn't a paid advertisement, but I particularly like Mayoko's Kitchen because of the ingredients. Mainly nuts, chickpea miso, nutritional yeast, and no palm oil. That is Miyokos Kitchen. The founder is a lot of fun and has a Facebook page where she goes live and shares recipes. I don't recommend a lot of processed vegan cheese with oil because it can still be as unhealthy as real cheese. But if you need a little to get over the hump, why not? Here is an example of some of the ingredients that go into these oil-based cheeses. I'm reading this from a package. Canola oil, safflower oil, coconut oil, glycerin, citric acid, and titanium dioxide. Yes, I mentioned 3 different oils. Definitely not healthy. A cheese made up of just oils is one of the unhealthiest things you can consume. What I do recommend is making your own cheese with nuts and tofu. As a matter of fact, let's go into Ordinary Vegan's kitchen and make some vegan cheese. This is one of my favorites, and I use it to stuff shells and for lasagna. All you need is one 12-ounce package of organic extra firm tofu, drained, and I like to leave it in a colander wrapped in a dish towel for about 10 minutes to remove the moisture. You will also need 3 tablespoons of fresh lemon juice, 3 tablespoons of nutritional yeast, 2 teaspoons of dry basil, 2 teaspoons of dried oregano, a half a teaspoon of salt and ground black pepper, and a 1/4 cup of chopped fresh parsley or basil. Add all the ingredients to a food processor or blender and pulse to combine. You want it the same consistency as ricotta cheese. Taste and adjust the seasonings. Now you can use this ricotta to stuff shells or make lasagna or stuff some inside some rolled up eggplant or zucchini and bake it with tomato sauce. That is all you need to make a healthy, cholesterol, oil-free ricotta cheese. That is it for this week's podcast. I am so excited to announce that my guest next week is author, star of Forks Over Knives, and one of the leading specialists on heart disease, Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn Jr. Not only that, he was a member of the Olympic gold medal rowing team an Army surgeon in Vietnam, and received the Bronze Star, and author of the best-selling book, Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease. If you would like to ask Dr. Esselstyn a question, please send me an email at nancy@ordinaryvegan.net or head over to my website, ordinaryvegan.net, and record a message. Just look for the green button on the side of the page that says Send a Voicemail. Thanks for joining me today, and thanks for being part of our healthy community. Before I go, I just want to say one more time, we welcome everyone here. You don't have to be the perfect vegan. You can take baby steps. You can start by omitting one thing like eggs, meat, or dairy, and then just keep adding on. My number one goal is to help you become as healthy as possible. And with great health comes great happiness. And you're worth it. If you want to learn more about plant-based nutrition, or if you are a health practitioner, yoga instructor, or coach and want to add plant-based nutrition to your resume, head over to healthyeatingandlivingwithplants.com, a comprehensive course in plant-based nutrition that includes over 100 plant-based recipes. You should also join our super supportive health and wellness community on Facebook, where we are over 310,000 strong. Just go to facebook.com/ordinaryvegan. Thanks again for joining me today. Till next time.
Thanks for joining our plant-based community today. Together, we can accomplish great things. Please subscribe so you don't miss any of Ordinary Vegan's recipes and plant-based tips. If you have any questions or feedback, email us at questions@ordinaryvegan.net. Until next time.